I'm Hannah Moore, CFP, a practicing financial planner and educator. I'm on a mission to change the way people think and talk about money. Let's get started. Having a baby is such a significant financial event for just about everybody. And how do we plan for that? So this is a part 2 episode. The first part we talked about from a monthly cash flow planning. What do you need to be thinking about? What does this look like, from childcare expenses to getting really, really clear on what your budget is and what that looks like. So now I want to focus on what are some of the bigger financial planning considerations. So not necessarily in the month-to-month perspective, but what are the big things that you need to be thinking about that are so important when you have a kid? So the first thing is life insurance. I know this is not the sexiest, funnest, happiest, joyful topic to talk about, especially as you guys are having kids and welcoming kids into your life. But life insurance is so incredibly important. Kids are expensive. The impact that it has on your life as you guys are, I'm 35 weeks pregnant, so I'm living this right now. Kids are just expensive. It has a significant increase in my cost of living. It increases so many things. And if something were to happen to either my husband or I, the financial impact could be devastating for us if we didn't have this life insurance. So life insurance can be a really affordable way for you to provide that protection for your family. And you can buy a term policy. You can buy it for 20 years just until they graduate high school. You can, look at what those different options are, but it's so incredibly important. No matter how well we plan in every other area of our financial life, if we don't plan for the possibility of something bad happening to us, then it can absolutely devastate your financial plan. So that's going to be a big piece there is making sure that you have solid life insurance in place. I will tell you, when we run life insurance analysis, it's almost always more than somebody thinks it should be. They're like, whoa, that's a lot of money. But it is a lot of money when we think about how much money you're bringing in over the course of time. If you're making, I'm going to use really round numbers, if you're making $100,000 over 20 years, that's $2 million. And that's significant when we're looking at, income replacement and things like that. So it's really important to be thinking about life insurance, making sure that you guys have it in place. And again, once you kind of have it in place, you can, I don't want to say set it and forget it, but just making sure that you have it. It's absolutely critical because we don't want to leave our families in really, really bad situations. So the second piece that I want to talk about is disability policy. So again, this is not the funnest topic, I know, but we look at, hopefully you already have a short-term disability in place if you are having a baby, if you are, especially the woman who's having the baby, because that'll cover oftentimes 60% of your base salary as you go on maternity leave. So it kind of gives you some of that buffer. So definitely keep that short-term disability policy, but also look at long-term disability policy. And so what this is saying, if you get injured, if you aren't able to work, if there is something that happens in your life where there's a disability event, that you're going to get some of that covered. Now, these disability policies usually cover 60% or sometimes 75% of your base salary. If you get disabled, it's going to be really hard. It just is. I've talked to a number of people who are on disability and they're just like, it's never enough. But it's going to be giving you a much better foundation. And so again, this idea of if you have kids and then if you were to be disabled, the pressure that will put on your partner or spouse or significant other, or if it's just you especially, you need to make sure that you have a plan in place for that. Oftentimes, if you work at a corporate place, that is an option for that. You can also get your own policy quotes as well for that. But it is a really important piece that is often overlooked when we're talking about financial planning, especially financial planning around with kids. So the third piece, this is a wonderful time to be relooking at your wills. Y'all are tuning into this episode thinking it's going to be so happy, like babies and kids and wonderful. And here I'm like, dun, 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 let's talk about you dying. But wills are so important because it's telling, where you want your money to go, right? So something happens to me, where do I want this money to go? And oftentimes it's just spouse to spouse, then to kids. It's the most common thing that I see. Obviously, there's lots of outside things that happen that aren't that simple, but that's the most common one that I see. But with kids, what you're also deciding is who's going to be the guardians of them if something should happen to both you and your spouse, or both you and your partner. And this is incredibly important. It gets really, really messy if you were not the one deciding this. So oftentimes it becomes up to a judge who doesn't know your family. They don't know that your brother's crazy and you don't want your kids to go to them. All they know is that your brother is offering to take them and is in a financial spot and in a life situation where they can take them. That's all they know. They don't know your family dynamics. They don't know what's important to you. I know we have people in our lives where they align very much with what my husband and I would want to raise our daughters. And I have 2 little girls. I'm about to have a little boy. So now it's going to be kids instead of daughters. But they want how we want to raise our kids. It's going to be far more aligned with what we view as important. And not that it's bad the other ways, but it's just what's most important to us. And so we want to be able to make sure that we have control over those choices of where our money is going to be going and what does this look like. And also, again, in a worst case scenario where both parents are out of the picture, there's usually financial assets that are at play, whether you have just your home or, hopefully you have life insurance at this point. But looking at, okay, what are going to be the rules that are set up for this? Who has access to this money and for what? And then when do you want your kids to receive it? And how do you want this to be? What are the checks and balances that you want in this? It gets to be a lot of questions around this that are really, really important. So you need to decide, first of all, who do you want to be like the physical guardians of your kids? Who do you want them to be like? Who do you want making their breakfast every morning? But then also looking at, if there's assets, life insurance, who do you want to be managing the money? Should that be the same person? For some of my clients, it is. For other clients, it's a checks and balances of saying, no, I actually want these other people to be the ones in charge of the money because they're really good at it. They have really good judgment. They have all these pieces. And so looking at that and saying, okay, that's actually who I want to be navigating this instead is really important. And again, setting up those rules of saying, here's what this will cover, this is what it won't cover. And there's some really good kind of just templates that you can follow of just starting points, because you might be hearing this and saying, Hannah, I have no idea. Like, I truly have no idea of what this looks like. But you can kind of get some ideas of what this could look like. And then, finally, if you have enough assets where it's your kids could inherit something when they get old enough, do you want them to get the money when they're 18? Do you want them to get the money when they're 25 or 30 or 35? Or, what does that look like for you and your family? What, do you want them to get all at once, or do you want to spread it out over time? You can really make a lot of those decisions for yourself, where you can really dictate, what is the most aligned with your family values that you want your kids, even if you're not there to have alignment on that. And the other thing that having your wills done, it's usually not just your wills, it's going to be your own power of attorneys, your own healthcare power of attorneys, which are just, again, hopefully you never need them. But in the event that you do, they're absolutely critical, because we want to be making decisions for ourselves, or we want those that we decide that we want to make those decisions for us to be the ones making the decisions, not the doctors or the courts or anything like that. We want to retain our autonomy on that and be able to make those decisions, because at the end of the day, you're the one who's going to know best for your family of what that looks for and what's needed for that. So the final piece I want to add here. So we're talking about, not the happiest topics of what happens, the worst case scenario. But I also want to talk about this really important piece that I don't feel like it's talked about enough in this conversation, and it's career management. Of looking at, we look at, clients in their 20s, 30s, 40s, their biggest asset is not necessarily their retirement account. It's not necessarily their investment account, their home. It's actually in like their human capital. How much are they going to be able to work? What is the value of, putting in time for working? That can often be the biggest asset that we see. And there is no right or wrong answer on this. This is, again, where personal finance is so personal. But I think it's really important to have this be part of the conversation of what is a career career management look like? What is this? Who's going to be the one responsible for watching the kids, right? Does that always fall to mom, or is it going to be mom and dad? Are we going to be able to focus? Does it make sense to focus, primarily on dad's career right now because of where his career trajectory is going, or do we need to focus on mom's career? And what does that look like to support both? What does it look like to support each other in this? And really approaching it again. I'm assuming that you're in a married relationship, on this, but what does it really look like to be approaching, not just our investments, not just our finances, but our careers, knowing that that is one of our biggest assets that we have is this career projection. And so figuring out, like, is there a way to, if you want to be a stay-at-home mom, I think that's wonderful. And like, what does this look like? What's kind of the bigger plan on that? Is that just something you're saying like, hey, like we're going to do that? Or do you want to get back in the workforce? Is there a way to maintain your skill set in a way that makes you more marketable when you come out on the other side? Is this something where you could take some classes during, while your kids are little? And again, I'm kind of exhausted thinking about that, but I also know that I'm working with kids, so I can't imagine adding classes on that. But maybe that's something that you look at as well. But just being really mindful and thoughtful about that, because it is a big piece of your financial plan, is not just the dollars and cents of the monthly budget, not just your larger financial plan of making sure that you have your life insurance, your wills, you kind of have this solid financial foundation, especially now that kids are dependent on you. But then looking at, what is our future earning potential? What does this look like? And again, just having these conversations together, and not that you're going to have a solution right away for all of it, but just that awareness can make such a difference to make sure that you are really setting yourself up for success going forward. So I hope that's helpful. It's certainly something that we're living out right now with baby number 3 on the way, with baby boy coming in just hopefully 5 weeks. Hopefully 5 weeks, although I think he might make an early arrival. We'll see. But I hope that was helpful for you guys, and just something to be thinking about, of figuring out how you can really set yourself up for success when you're having a baby. Thanks for listening to this episode of Everyday Money with Hannah Moore. If you like what you heard, subscribe and check out livewealthynow.com. We have a lot more resources to help you live wealthy now.